what we had seen in April, you will recall, is that countries all around the world have acted quickly and decisively. Fiscal action has been unprecedented, and the fiscal monitor, now in the fall, documents fiscal action, discretionary fiscal action, amounting to almost $12 trillion, which is an absolutely huge amount of fiscal support that has been deployed. That, as you were saying, was fundamental to extend lifelines to people, to extend lifelines to companies that needed support during this period. As you also said, given that the general government balance went into a sharp deficit, and the same was true for primary balance, at the same time that economic activity was negative throughout the world. But at this point in time, what we are emphasizing is the importance of avoiding premature withdrawal of fiscal support. So all countries will have to adapt to their circumstances, but fiscal support is still needed. Emphasize that that is the case because it's necessary to sustain the rebound in economic activity. It is necessary to avoid long-term scarring to the economic structure. But at the same time, public debt risks have increased, and given the size and the speed of intervention, these risks are quite considerable. So, for all countries around the world, it's very important to follow principles of good governance and transparency. And in all cases, we would recommend that countries look at public finances from a medium to long-term perspective, that they adopt medium to long-term fiscal frameworks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's certainly a range, but let's get specific on China. Based on the timeline of pandemic waves in China, last time we talked about in April, China just came out of the most severe wave so far of the pandemic. And last time you mentioned that China has been increasing fiscal support to try to achieve a more sustainable economic recovery. And now, how is the situation about public debt in China, and what are specific risks China is facing at?
I think it's useful to recall that China is one of the few countries in the world that will have positive growth in 2020. Of course, there are sectors that are affected by COVID-19 and the need for social distancing. But the Chinese economy and the Chinese society seem to have been able to adapt quite well to the imperatives coming from the need to give priority to the fight against the epidemic. In China, we do see quite a significant increase in the public debt to GDP ratio, in part due to the fact that both in 2020 and 2021, there is quite a substantial fiscal support to the economy. China has followed the pattern of fiscal policy around the world, and it has supported Chinese households and Chinese firms. And the support has been quite generous and quite extensive. And hence the central government has also extended financial support to subnational governments. And that's very important for the system to work in China. The risks associated with COVID-19 and the risks associated with the government intervention during this period are quite sizable in China as in the rest of the world. So it's very important to reinforce the macro fiscal framework in China, and it is in the nature of policymaking in China to take a very long run perspective, and that in the context of the management of the current situation is something which is a particular important asset to rely on.